As people, we have a nasty habit of not recognizing the resources that are all around us. As a result of this, we can't experience the benefit they offer us, and we end up in an unnecessary sense of lack. And this is especially true for the other people around us. For the sake of this conversation, let's say that a resource is something that can be drawn on when wanted or needed, especially to enhance your well-being. When we resource something, what this means is that we recognize what it is that is of value, that we want or need, and then we actively draw upon it and use it or take it in, fully experiencing, which is seeing, hearing, feeling, and receiving, its full benefit. Every person holds within themselves a powerful resource or many. This means that every single person walking this earth, including you, is a powerful resource. It's my promise that if you come to realize this, the world will suddenly feel prosperous and completely abundant to you. And, it must be said, that different people hold very different resources within themselves, and what this means is that different people and therefore different relationships provide very different things. For example, one person and therefore relationship might not be a resource for communication, information, or advice, but they might be an incredible resource for adventure, fun, and joint experiences. One person and therefore relationship might be a powerful resource for honesty and understanding, but not a resource for dependability or encouragement. One person and therefore relationship might be a resource for physical affection. Another might be a resource for security. Another might be a resource for information on a specific topic. Another might be a resource for mutual enjoyment of similar interests. Another might be a resource for a helping hand. Another might be a resource for contacts. Another might be a resource for new ideas. Another might be a resource for emotional availability. Another might be a resource for being pushed toward personal growth. Another might be a resource for good food. Another might be a resource for acceptance. Another might be a resource for entertainment. Every single person is a resource for something. The question is, can you recognize that resource within them? And can you recognize the value of it, regardless of whether that resource is something you want and need? When we get into trouble with resourcing others, it really boils down to two basic problems. The first problem is that we refuse to accept that every single person is a powerful resource for something that is potentially very valuable to us. Because of this, we limit ourselves socially and therefore limit our access to the resources that are within other people, and as a result, we end up in an unnecessary state of lack and super angry at all the limited people in our life that aren't providing us everything we need. 2, we try to meet our needs or get what we want by drawing specific things from individuals in our life that don't actually contain or have that specific resource to offer in the first place. And as a result, we end up in an unnecessary state of lack and yet again, super angry at the people in our life. Here are a couple examples of this. Maggie does not really like Hector. She doesn't like anything about his personality. He's rather cold and practical and distant. Honestly, she doesn't think that Hector has anything to really offer her life, and she would be happier if she could just cut the relationship off altogether. The problem is that Maggie is not really looking at anything except for what Hector lacks. She's not really looking at what resources he has within him and at his strengths. What Maggie has missed is that Hector is incredibly analytical, which is interesting because Maggie has all kinds of problems in her life. Hector is the person in her life that could perhaps help her most by making an unbiased assessment of these problems, looking at all the different angles of these problems, and then offering very effective, efficient, and logical solutions for each one of them. She would definitely feel better towards him if she recognized that Hector could be the one that could tell her how to get out of the situations that have been causing her to suffer for so many years, not just be warm and sympathetic that she is in them. Also, she could go to someone else for the warmth and sympathy that she is needing. But because Maggie absolutely refuses to recognize this resource within Hector, who is already in her life, she just spends her time feeling super angry that nobody can tell her how to get out of the intolerable weight of all of the problems in her life. Hector is a homosexual man. He grew up with 11 siblings. What we can say about his life experience is that he never felt like his existence mattered at all. He has been desperate for relationship security and to feel like he's important and for availability and to be prioritized for as long as he can remember. Currently, Hector is fixated on Max as being the one who is going to provide these things for him. The problem is, Max is a heterosexual man who has a nasty little tendency to drop every relationship in his life the second he gets into a romantic relationship with a woman. Max is not actually a reliable source for the security, availability, and prioritization that Hector is looking for. It just so happens that it seems like it because he's single right now. But when Max found another woman to be in a romantic relationship with, suddenly he stopped being available to and stopped prioritizing Hector, causing Hector to be re-traumatized. And Hector is now drowning in this sense of lack. Not only that, he's absolutely furious at Max and is desperately trying to get those resources back from Max that he has lost. He's furious that Max is no longer providing that security and that prioritization and that availability that he seemed to be providing before. Outside of just lacking the awareness of the resources that are all around us within other people, there are actually quite a few reasons why you might have resistance to recognizing these resources or resourcing them. We're going to look at just a few of them. In human culture today, so many people believe that it is straight up wrong to use somebody else for your benefit. This is why we have such an issue asking other people for help. We tend to worry that asking people for what we need and want is using them. But it isn't using people that's the problem. We use each other every single day. And guess what? People want the resources they hold to be recognized for their value, and people want those resources to be used. What they don't want is for you to use them as a resource to their own detriment. And when we say, I feel used, this is what we mean. We don't mean that someone sees our value and is positively resourcing us. We mean that they don't really care about our well-being and are simply taking advantage of us. But using people and creating a mutually beneficial symbiosis does not have to be a contradiction in terms. And using someone and loving someone also does not have to be a contradiction in terms. If you want to understand more about this in depth, watch my video titled Using People, Ask Teal episode about interdependence. Another reason that we may have an issue recognizing a resource within somebody and or resourcing it is that it forces us to expand into and consciousness. Also, it forces us to become closer to things that we want to push away from ourselves instead. As people, we love to see things in black and white. We feel like seeing things in a black and white way makes us more safe, but the reality is not black and white. The reality is rather gray. The reality is we can have so many valuable resources within a person, side by side with aspects that cause other people so much pain. For example, we may have had a parent that was so painful to us in our childhood that we want to write them off as all bad and as having no value or resource within them. But the reality is that while they may not be a resource for love or connection, they may be a powerful resource for information on a specific subject or financial abundance. If you walk down a jailhouse corridor, every person you pass is a well of powerfully valuable resources, from skills to knowledge to abilities to talents to character traits. You may have resistance to seeing this because it scares you to stop seeing them as all bad. Another reason that you might have resistance to seeing a resource within somebody else or taking it in so as to resource that resource is because you are so afraid of taking it in. We only become afraid of taking in or resourcing when doing so led us to pain before. For example, let's say that in your childhood, you resourced your parent for caretaking, only to find out that doing so put you in a state of guilt and put you in a state of indebtedness to that person. Or we might have resourced somebody for a sense of belonging only to have that person die. So the minute they died, we lost overnight that sense of belonging. So it's tempting to not want to resource anything from anyone because we could lose it. So it's almost like the pain of denying yourself, we feel, is less painful than the pain of losing something that we had. Or for example, you may have been indoctrinated with the idea that when you resource anything from someone, you are weak and you are a burden and you are worthless. That the only thing that matters is you being independent. Now, when you tried to resource somebody in the past for something, if you were indoctrinated in this way, you would have been massively shamed for it. So now there's this association between resourcing someone else and shame. If you are somebody who is afraid to resource others, I want you to watch 4 of my videos. The first is how to receive. The second is cut the invisible strings, how to detach from manipulation in relationships. The third is dependence versus independence. And the fourth is be consciously transactional, why every relationship is transactional. Another reason that we may have resistance to recognizing a resource within somebody or to resourcing a resource within somebody is because we may fall into the trap of narrow thinking regarding relationships, and as a result, put ourselves in a state of lack. Of course, we do this because we think that narrow thinking regarding relationships is going to cause us to stay safe. In alignment with this, it must be said that so many people, I mean most people in the world, have a very narrow vision and a very strict idea about how their social lives must look. As a result, they end up not being creative enough at all with their social structure so as to ensure that their needs can actually be met. I'll give you some examples of what I mean. We may be terrified that if we resource something from a specific person, that may be a threat to this other person who we're currently resourcing. So we're afraid that by resourcing that thing, this person is going to withdraw the resource that they're providing, and we don't feel like we can afford that. So we're going to just say, no, I'm not going to recognize or take that in because I don't want to lose this resource. Or for example, we may think that the only acceptable structure for our social lives is a single family home. But as a result, we aren't getting our wants or needs met by any stretch of the imagination because they are so limited, because there are so few people to resource from. But let's face it, if you fall into this category, you're just too afraid to break outside of the social norm because of whatever consequences you think you're going to meet with by doing so. Or for example, you may feel like the only way that somebody can be a reliable resource for you is if you are in a romantic relationship with them, and that no other relationship can possibly meet any of your needs, especially won't be a guarantee for you to get your needs met. To learn more about this, you can watch my video titled, "A Romantic Relationship is Not All There Is." Don't be that person who misses the resources that are right in front of you. Don't be the person who misses the value of those resources that are right in front of you. I need you to accept that all people, including you, contain within themselves very powerful resources that are very, very valuable. So recognize those resources and resource them. You will have so much more energy, so much more power for your life. Your life will be so much more abundant. You will feel like life is prosperous, and your life will be so much richer because of it. Have a good week. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel and consider sharing this video with your friends. You can also click on the bell icon to be notified of the next time that I post a video. I want to thank you personally for the bravery that you have to step into awareness. I'll see you in the next video.